Welcome to the Fort Collins Symphony Podcast. We are talking with Avery Gagliano today. Avery is joining us in just a couple weeks to play Mozart's 24th Piano Concerto with the orchestra. So, Avery, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you play Mozart with us. I wondered if we could start a little lighter. What did you do for Christmas this year?
So my family and we took a trip out to the Grand Canyon. And Christmas Day, we actually hiked into the canyon and back up. So it took us 11 hours. We couldn't walk the next day. We were so sore, but it was absolutely incredible. Just really inspiring to be out there in nature. And, it's for those of you who haven't been, it's just a really fantastic place to visit. You go see all the layers of rock, and it's very deceiving because it's hard to get a sense of the depth. But as you travel and as you hike, you get to experience all of that. So we were there for 2 days and then spent the rest of the holidays in Sedona for more hiking.
Since you were going in December, was it cold? Does it get cold down there?
It was cold, surprisingly. And I guess perhaps it's just me. I have this misconception that every place that's warm is warm year round. But it was in the low 30s in the upper rim of the Grand Canyon, and in Sedona it was a little warmer. I would say the 50s. Yeah.
Have you been to Colorado before?
I have been to Colorado. I actually spent the summer there. Last summer, I was in Vail for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I've also been to Aspen twice. Mm-hmm. So I'm somewhat familiar with Colorado.
When I moved here, I was expecting it to just be cold all the time. That was my perception, and it turned out to be a lot hotter in the summers than I thought it would be.
Yeah. It's beautiful out there, so I'm really looking forward to being there this time of year.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't get caught in any snowstorm. How's the weather been so far?
We had snow about a week ago, and it's still kind of here because it's been cold. You just never know in January, February what we're gonna get. It'll be fine for a couple weeks, and then we'll get it all down out of nowhere. So, I mean, most weeks it's fine. It's just here and there. So I think we'll be good. We'll be good.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. And so you're playing Mozart 24 with us. What's your relationship with this piece? Have you performed it before, or how many times have you performed it? Could you just give us an overview?
Yeah, so I actually performed this once last year, almost the same time. So exactly a year ago, and Mozart only wrote 2 piano concertos in the minor key, and I did learn the D minor one first. Mm-hmm. So I always feel like I kind of ticked off a box once I learned this concerto. It's hard to know where to begin with this piece, but it's just such a monumental Mozart concerto and piano concerto in general. It's extremely dramatic, and it's just working through it has been a pleasure and continues to be one as I revisit the piece a year later.
Yeah. And then I saw you performing it again shortly after, right?
Yes. With the Louisville Orchestra.
Very cool. Yeah, Mozart only wrote, how many piano concertos did he do? Was it 27?
27.
27, yeah, and only 2 are in minor. And he wrote 41 symphonies, and only 2 of those are in minor also. So, yeah, it's always interesting to see how those are different. I've seen that some critics, some people
absolutely
say that 24 was his best piano concerto. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't like putting labels on best or worst, because it's such a personal thing, and also I find certainly it's one of his greatest, but also as musicians, we're temperamental as well, and as we work through a piece, this could be our world, and then maybe we move to a different piano concerto, and that becomes our world. And so I can't say it's the best or not the best,
Yeah.
but I could certainly understand why many people feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're preparing Mozart or a Mozart concerto, how is that different than preparing something bigger like Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky? What is that process like for you?
Hmm. You know, I don't view the process itself any differently. I think what makes a difference is the fact that it is Mozart,
Mhm.
and it is a completely different style of writing from Rachmaninoff or Brahms. And so what you have to consider or what I consider as I work through this music is the style, um, the format of the writing in relationship to the orchestra.
Mhm.
Mozart and this concerto specifically, there's so much dialogue between the soloist and the orchestra. Um, and I think that's what makes this concerto actually rather unique for its time, the amount of involvement and dialogue and exchange. And so I have to be very conscious of that as I work through this piece and really know what's happening in the orchestra so that I'm not just focused only on my own part and what I'm playing, but to know that it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And so I have to be in tune and aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you describe more what how it's a dialogue and how that may differ from earlier music?
Yeah, so in the early piano concertos, it's very strictly you have the tutti, which is another word for the orchestra part where just the orchestra is playing, and then you have the soloist entrance, and they play their bit, and then it's back to the orchestra, and then it's back to the soloist, and so you have this kind of back and forth, but it's very clearly marked, and with this concerto, and feel free to elaborate with me on this, but there are a lot of melodies that are exchanged um, within the solo section, for example. Even as the piano has their melody, there are counter melodies that you hear in the orchestra that are playing off of that.
Mhm.
Um, Specifically in the second movement, you get a lot of that with the winds. So I guess Mozart was sort of at this time pushing the boundaries more, um, pushing the format of the piano concerto more.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, so instead of orchestra solo, there's a lot more overlap of the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
um what do you hope people take away from this performance? How do you want them to be changed? What do you want them to experience while you're playing? And that maybe not this performance only, but all of your performances. What's your philosophy of what how the audience should be different on the other side of it?
Well, I think it's just that the audience is different. I would never prescribe an audience to feel a specific way after the performance. I think my goal as a performer is just to move people, and so um, I'd hope that people going in are transformed in whatever way they are. It might not be the outcome that I had expected,
Hmm.
or that I would have experienced if I were in the audience, but just the fact that they're able to experience something and come away with new ideas, new thoughts, or new feeling is the most I could ask for.
Yeah. Yeah. The last movement is a theme and variations. Could you explain what that is quick and then maybe share some of your favorite ways that Mozart plays with that?
Yes. So a theme and variation is a form of music where you have a theme and then it reiterates but slightly different each time. And so you'll hear the opening statement and then it'll come back again, but perhaps the left hand will have changed or the rhythm might even be slightly varied. And it could even, you know, sometimes in music composers, it's very common to write the theme in the opposite key. So if it was in a major key, then you then hear an iteration of the theme that's in a minor key. So Mozart was really creative in applying this form to the third movement. I guess it's what to me. I don't think I have a specific favorite moment of the third movement, but I do. There's one variation where you have triplets in the left hand, and it's very rhythmic and powerful, and I just love that one because it's so exciting to play, and it really just projects this power and strength. And it brings in the orchestra in a really awesome way as well. People have this idea that Mozart is very classical.
Yeah.
But I think what he shows through this piece, and hopefully what I hope to convey, is that it's quite the contrary. You know, it is full of risk-taking. It is very dramatic. It is really heightened theater in a way. And so I hope people and listeners, when they come, that they will be able to experience this whole range of emotion and excitement and character.
Yeah. Yeah, we always try to remind people that Mozart was an opera composer, and there is so much drama and so much character.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just pretty background music.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people listen to Mozart.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. I wanted to talk a little bit. I know you really like pop music, and you do some songwriting. Is that right? Yeah, I was curious about because so many classical musicians don't touch the pop world at all. I do. I work with a rock orchestra in Denver.
Cool.
So I love that world, and it's so different. I heard in another interview you talking about this. But what are those two worlds like for you? Like and I hate to say the serious classical and the more fun pop, but I hope you know what I mean. What's the difference between those two for you?
Well, classical music requires a lot more focus, I find. And I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, actually. I find, and this might just be me, but I need a certain buffer period of like a few days of really becoming fully absorbed in this world before I feel like I've hit the point where everything in my mind is focused and I'm fully present in this world of classical music, and that's just been my experience as a performer. Whereas pop is just so immediately accessible.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there are probably many reasons for that if you really wanted to break it down, but just at face value, I think pop is so much more on the surface, and so it's really easy to listen to and then to put it aside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's almost fun in that way, where it takes less of an investment to get that fulfillment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a very different fulfillment. Again, I don't want to say one is better than the other, but I always wish more classical musicians had more of a pop background because I think we get too intellectual about music sometimes. We forget
Yeah.
about that most people are walking around listening to pop music, and we want to connect with them also.
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate because I grew up in a family that listened to literally every kind of music. So
Hmm.
I do have that background. Most of my friends, they love listening to pop as well.
Yeah.
We're all serious classical musicians, but we appreciate all other genres of music.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite non-classical artists right now?
Oh, um, I've been in a bit of an R&B phase,
Oh, yeah.
actually. um, I can't list any specific artists, but in addition to that, I've listened to a lot of Bozzy, and I like Charlie Puth a lot. He's one of my favorite songwriters. So I kind of go on rotation.
What's the what's the hardest part of what you do?
I think the hardest part of being a pianist
Hmm.
is the amount of solitude we experience. We are a one-man band, and so when you're working through music, it's just you and the piano, and you have to hold yourself accountable. And sometimes that's very difficult to do. Also, when you perform, that's why performing with orchestra is so exciting because you get to meet other musicians and play with other musicians, and it's a lot of fun. But when you're playing solo recitals, again, it's just you alone on stage, and you are responsible for carrying everything through. So I would say that's the biggest challenge of being a pianist. And then on the flip side, it's as a musician, it's just so easy to connect
Yeah.
with other musicians. We're like one big family, even though we haven't all met each other. But when you do, we understand each other and we can play with each other. We can read music, make music together. So that's the best part.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you mostly do solo recitals where you are now, and then sometimes you play with orchestra? Is that right?
Yes, although actually this season, or I guess this in the spring, it's mostly concerto performances,
Okay.
which is new for me because I'm used to having maybe one or two a year, but I have a
Hmm.
little more
Hmm.
this time around.
Yeah, I'm always so interested in what the different contexts that people like to play. Some people really like to focus on chamber music or solo or orchestral, and I'm curious. Zoom forward 20 years. Like, what does your
Yeah.
ideal mix of playing look like?
I see myself mostly as a chamber and soloist,
Hmm.
like solo recital. As much as I love performing with orchestra, I think long term, career wise, I'm not going to be the artist that is constantly playing with huge orchestras all the time. I really love chamber music for the intimacy
Yeah.
that you get and being able to work closely with um, just a few musicians. And I really hope to see myself doing a lot more of that. I've been very fortunate at my school at Curtis that they really foster and encourage us to play chamber music. Chamber music. So since I was young, I've been playing a lot of it, and I hope that can be a part of my career moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Just about everybody that we interview for this show is playing a concerto with the orchestra, and just about everybody I think has said that chamber music is their favorite thing.
Mm.
And I look back at when I was in school, still getting to play chamber music every week, and I just love it. There's nothing like it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What is your instrument, by the way?
I play violin.
Okay.
You can it's right there. That's the corner of my
Oh,
case.
there it is. All right.
Our last question is, do you have a fun hobby, skill, interest, something that's unique that people may not know about you or that people can't read about in your bio?
Well, apart from songwriting,
Mhm.
I am a big cook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I really love spending time in the kitchen. I'm a foodie, first of all, so wherever I travel, I always like to try places. That's one of my favorite parts of traveling. But I also, when I'm home, I like to cook a lot, and I really cook anything. I also used to bake a lot when I was younger, and
Mhm.
then I sort of lost the time for it. Plus, my family could never finish everything I baked, so there was that problem as well. But yes, that's something most people wouldn't know about me,
Do
perhaps.
you have like a signature dish that you make when people come over or anything like that?
No, not really. I do a lot of Asian cooking because my mom's Chinese.
Mhm.
So maybe I would, if I had you over, I might make the stir fry tofu or meat dish, um, or pasta. I guess on the flip side, we're not getting very innovative here. I would come up with something.
Okay. Okay.
You wouldn't be
Perfect.
disappointed.
Oh no, I'm sure I would not. I love cooking too.
Yeah.
Um, Great. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you want to send the listeners off with? We'll encourage them, of course, to come to the concert. We'll have more information in the description. Any final words to the listeners?
Just thank you for listening, and
Yeah,
I hope to see you on February 4th.
yeah, fantastic. And we're live streaming this concert, so you can see it
Okay,
even if you're not in Fort Collins in person. We'll be live streaming it as well.
fantastic.
Perfect. Avery, thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to working with you in a couple weeks.
Likewise, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.